is done, louder than I'll sing your praise. I will only sing your Behold, Jehovah, seated on the throne. Abba, Father, the well that overflows, the God who was and is and shall be forevermore. Holy is the Lord. Amen. Amen. Blessing and honor, glory and power. Amen. 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 Blessing and honor and glory and power. Amen. Behold the way, the truth and the life. Perfect Savior, the blood that washed us white, the God who was and is and will sing, sing, sing to my God, my King, for all else fades away, and I will laugh with this heart you've made, for you've been good always, for you've been good always. Oh, our Lord, our Lord, how majestic is your name in all the earth. We behold the rising sun, the earth awakes, your hope is come. We look to you, we long for you, oh Lord. We behold the breaking dawn, the light that shines over everyone. We look to you, we long for you, oh Lord. Oh, our Lord, our Lord, how majestic is your name in all the earth. We behold the falling rain, like waters rise, come flood this place. We reach for you, we cling to you, oh Lord. Oh, our Lord, our Lord, how majestic is your name in all the earth. Oh, our Lord, how majestic is your name in all the earth. Oh, your name is a light in the darkness. Oh, your name is the word of truth. Oh, your name.
All right, well, good evening. Welcome. Thank you all for being here. We're excited. My name's Corby Richardson. I'm the lead pastor here at Friendship, and we're excited to be able to host y'all this evening for a time of questions, answers, and dialogue. And so many of y'all have been on the Friendship campus over the past many years that you've lived here. Some of you are new, and this is your first time here, and so we're excited that you're here. I know those hosting y'all tonight, the panel, is excited to be here, and so thank y'all for the opportunities. Couple housekeeping. If you need to go to the restroom, just straight back towards the coffee bar. Men's and women's is on the right-hand side. And as you head out tonight, be orderly in the fashion that you are of leaving. I know some of y'all had to park in the field, and that is a great opportunity. That means that you care about your community, and so do we here at Friendship. And so if you've ever seen anything that we have here online, we have a sole purpose to connect people to Jesus. And we also want to be your neighborhood church, which means not just on a Sunday or a Wednesday or for discipleship opportunities, but that means for community events. We want to be a place of yes. So that's why we've hosted youth leagues, practices. We host recovery ministries here. Many of y'all have been here for our pumpkin patch. We do fireworks here, just things that can engage our community to be together, because those are things that sets us apart as a community here in the Dripping Springs area, is that we get to do things together. And we work really hard at doing that. And so if you're new to town, we want to invite you into that, whether it's here at Friendship or just anything that happens in the community with our school district. If you're on the Austin side of things that are going on, we want to welcome you to tonight as well. I know sometimes you don't get all the way down this direction, and so welcome to the 78737 side of 1826. And so as we get started tonight, it's a time for us to have dialogue and discussion. And so we're excited to be able to do that in an organized and civil manner. And so if you're one of those people that don't like to be civil, just go ahead and tell me now, and that way we'll know to watch out for you.
Talk to Ron.
Yeah. So, when we go to do things, we are tasked as leaders in our community, as leaders in our neighborhoods, we are tasked to have wisdom and discernment. And so the way that we do that here, and we want to lead with Friendship, is we have a time at 6:56 p.m., we just passed it, that we as a church stop and pray. We ask for God to provide a strategy, resources, and people. And I think anywhere in our life that we look at what is our strategy, what are the resources that we need, and who are the people that are going to be involved, we cannot go wrong because we're asking questions, we're getting input, and then we can make a decision to go forward. And so as we get started tonight, I'm going to take time. If you want to join with me in prayer, if not, but we're going to start with a word of prayer. We're going to ask God for his discernment on everything that's going on, because safety and security here, we all know that there is eternal impact, life or death impact that we have seen on our discussion for tonight. And so we want to ask for continued safety as we and our children and those that are visiting our community drive up and down this road and this project that we're going to discuss tonight. So please join me if you would. Lord, we thank you for a place that we can meet, a place that you established here in 1903, that this can be a place of peace, that this can be a place of worship, and this can be a place for this community. So Lord, we ask you for the strategy that will be good for all that are involved. We ask you for the resources, and we pray for the people that drive up and down our roads. We pray for our students that are learning to drive. We pray for those that are new to the area as they learn what it means to be a part of this community. And so, Lord, we pray over our time tonight that even in this community meeting, that you will be honored and glorified. And it's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen. And if I can ever help y'all with anything, you saw our parking crew outside. They are here to help. These are volunteer men from our church and one of our students from our youth group. And so if there's anything that we can do to help y'all here in this community and being a part of what's happening here in Dripping Springs, Southwest Austin, please let us know. You can find us on our website at friendshipcreekside.com. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Bill to welcome us and get us started for tonight.
Thank you, Corby. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the church tonight where this meeting is formed. We started talking about doing something about safety issues and on 1826 about 5 months ago now. We have 10 communities and 3 houses of worship that are with us on this. Britton, will you show that slide? As you all know, traffic is, with all the development out here, traffic has just been getting worse and worse. Up here, you can see on the upper right, 85,000 cars on US 290. And down here on the left, 60,000 cars in 1826. This is from a study done by Dripping Springs last year, and it shows what traffic is going to look like in about 2040. And just about every study that we've seen is showing these kinds of numbers. Additionally, the latest data on traffic accidents is showing a steep rise this year. We've had several fatalities just right around here. Life Flight has come out. So I think you as our neighbors, you know what it's like, and I don't really have to tell you, but that's the reason we're meeting tonight. We want to come up with some ideas for how we can make this better, and that's why we've called together the following people. We have Mark Jones, Commissioner of Hays County, Walt Smith, he was been our commissioner in this area, Willie Samora, TxDOT, Ashby, Johnson, Campo, sorry there, and this is our representative, Aaron Zwiner's office, and Constable Ron Hood. So everybody's going to give a little talk for a few minutes, and then we're going to open it up to questions. If you have signed up to ask a question, then we are going to proceed in that manner. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Bill, and thanks for putting this together. For those of y'all who don't know a little bit of the history of the organization, it started, or I started working with these guys about 5-6 months ago, looking at various entrances and exits to different developments here in the area. Not just one in particular necessarily, but that's what brought us together really. And since that time, they've truly grown. I think the first time I met with y'all had maybe 4 communities, something like that. They've done a great job. Before I go on any further, I also want to thank Corby for having us this evening. For those of y'all who don't know, I'll brag on Corby for a minute. We're not the greatest of friends. We're friends, but it's not like we hang out every day or anything. But I will tell you that it's always nice to see somebody who's not only involved in his professional world and in his church, but I met Corby because I was an instructor for the second year of Leadership Dripping Springs through the Chamber of Commerce here, and Corby was in class 2. I happened to be in class 1, and that was the first outreach that I'd ever had from this church. And I want to thank y'all for those of you who are members here for allowing us to host elections here, have meetings here. We've had HOA meetings here, community meetings, and it is appreciated. Whenever I was elected back in 2019, elected 2018, but started serving in 2019, 1826, at that point, I felt like I was well aware of the issues on the roadway itself. And that's because I got to drive it every day whenever the construction was done back in 17. And those of you who lived here at that point can remember whenever this roadway was expanded at that point. And I can tell you that as someone who drove it every day, I was well aware that, or at least I thought, that whenever that construction ended in, I believe, December of 17, that it was probably undersized for the volume of traffic that we saw on it every day. And with that expansion, that there had to be some improvements there. I can tell you that from that time, when I took office, I've done a lot of learning, not just on this roadway, but on how these things expand, how over time, and given the just sheer number of people that we're getting in our community, how it has to move as far as it being a living roadway. What I can tell you, and I don't know that you know this, but in the 2020 census, and we got those numbers, hopefully everyone here filled out a census application or a census form back in 2020. In March of that year, we didn't get the numbers from that. I mean, it was in the middle of COVID. We didn't get the actual data from that until September of 2021. It took them that long to pull that together and give it to Hays County. And what we learned was that we were the fastest growing county in the U.S., hands down. Not only were we the fastest growing county in the U.S., but Commissioner Jones and I shared the 2 fastest growing areas of the county. And therefore, we had the fastest growing area of the 2 fastest growing precincts and the fastest growing county in the entire U.S. And I tell you that because in the past, I can say this because I'm only in my first term, right? But I feel like we were kind of on the menu and not at the table when it came to prioritization, because we are in the same corridor as I-35. And over time, I'm thankful for organizations like Campo, which Ashby represents, and Commissioner Jones is Hays County representative on there. I'm thankful that, especially given these new population numbers, they've really made a commitment to step up and look at what we need in this area of the county. And when it comes to my precinct, up until November, I represented all the way from the Hays County Courthouse, or a block from it. I represented 25% of Texas State University, all the way up through Kyle, all the way to the Blanco County line. I had half the county, because 10 years ago, nobody lived there. Not nobody, but they divide our population in the county every 10 years by 4, and that's how we arrive at how many people we have in our precinct, and then we have to draw a precinct that does that. In November of this year, up until November of this year, Commissioner Jones represented right here to the edge of 1826. He had everything west and one section of Rimrock. I had pretty much everything north in this direction, everything west. Because of the shift in population, there is so much population in Commissioner Jones's precinct. His precinct shrunk significantly. Now he has a large portion of Kyle, a smaller portion of Buda, and that only in that area right there, it's 60,000 people. I have 60,000 people in my precinct, and I'm a third the size of what I was. And I represent now from the city, from I-35 in Buda to the west city limits of Dripping Springs. And I stop. And I have 60,000 people there, roughly 60,000. By the time we got our census numbers, I knew of over 2,000 homes that had COs on them, certificates of occupancy, that weren't there when they took the census. And so I know I'm overpopulated in my precinct already, but those same people are moving here just like I did 11 years ago, 10 years ago, because they want to move to the hill country. They want the culture and the kind of life that we have here, the sense of community we have here. And statutorily, we as a county, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what we can and can't do as a county. Whenever someone wants to put 1,000 homes next door to where you grew up, the county has a very strict set of guidelines given by the state. Very specifically, we can help them with the plat. In other words, we can say, yes, you can have this number of plats as far as acreage, and you can only put one home on it. There's some very stringent guidelines that the state gives us, and we're in an area where we actually have more control than some places because we're over an aquifer, and we have some authority to say you can't build houses every 10 foot unless you have sewage that's taking the sewage out of here, unless you have water that's piped in. But if you have those things, then the state is very adamant that we have a mandate of approval. And what that means is if they can prove they have water, they can prove they have wastewater, then we are very much a private property rights state. And so it's not the government's decision to tell you what you can do with your property. And I see a lot of good in that, but I also see some of the downfall or some of the lacking. I'm a Republican, I'm talking about regulation, increased regulation, what we need. But there are holes in that we don't have the opportunity to address. And I say that because we can regulate your septic system. That's how we have control over minimum lot size. It's not because the state says you can mandate a minimum lot size. We can't by law. But what we can say is if you put in a septic system, then you have to have an acre or you have to have a half acre. And that's how we are able to limit some of that massive increase in development that we're seeing here. That being the case, I sure am glad nobody slammed the door 2 months before I got here. Because I really like my house, and I love the fact that my kids know all their friends at school, and I get to serve on the Ed Foundation, and I get to be a part of this community. And I wouldn't want to raise them anyplace else. So those are the two sides of that coin that we deal with on a daily basis. We know the people are coming, and unfortunately, we have a neighbor to our north, and I won't ask Ashby to talk about Travis County, but I get to. And they kind of put their head in the sand a number of years ago about the need for their transportation infrastructure and the people that were moving there. And when they did that, they said, if we don't build it, they won't come. And it didn't work. I can promise you it didn't work. And so whenever we sat down, we as a county sit down every so often, hopefully every 5 to 6 years. It's been about since 2013 since we did a full-scale rewrite of our master transportation plan for Hays County. We did an update in 2016, or the county did. Again, before I got there, Commissioner Jones was a big part of that, was very supportive of it. But we did a complete rewrite of our master transportation plan here. And every commissioner has their own priorities in their area as far as what they want to see. And we worked with a group that did an amazing job in trying to coordinate with our school systems, trying to coordinate with the state, trying to coordinate with Campo, trying to coordinate with our individual municipalities to try to address what those needs are that we saw. I know I've talked about population a lot, but just in how many of y'all know where the city limits of Dripping Springs is? You know where HEB ends? That's kind of the eastern city limits. And if you go down past the middle school, Bell Springs Road, that's kind of the farthest west. If you go north, it's just at the elementary school. And if you go south, it's at 150. There's one property past 150 that's in the city limits. In that area right there, which is served by the Dripping Springs Water Supply Corp. And the City of Dripping Springs for water supply, there's platted or planned 18,000 new homes. So what we're seeing there, we're seeing here. We're seeing on 967, we're seeing on 1826, we're seeing all over our portion of the county. So how do we address that? And when we looked at our master transportation plan, whenever our consultants and our transportation folks sat down with me, they said, what do you want to see first? And I said, number one, I want every area that we know is a safety risk. I want some plan to address that area. And I'm not talking about entire roadways necessarily or single intersections, but where we know there's a problem and we've had accidents or we have continued safety concerns, we need to address those. And those are as simple as, well, there's water over the road here every time it rains, to, hey, this is a, you know, I'll talk to our JPs, our Justices of the Peace, and there's one intersection, not here, but on the west side of my precinct, and I've talked to the last 3 JPs, and they've gone to 4 deaths at that intersection. That's a problem that needs to be addressed. And so, first things first, safety. The second thing was, I said, I want to look at our existing infrastructure, and I want to know how we can get the most volume out of the infrastructure that we have in those areas where we know people are moving to without having to build new roadways. In other words, if we can add a lane, if we can add safety, shoulders, if we can add turn lanes, how can we address that in a timely fashion and do it in a pragmatic way? The third thing I said was identify those areas where we don't have that infrastructure, where we know there's a need and we don't have a way to address it without actually building a roadway. And if you look, I give Commissioner Jones a hard time because the east side of his precinct, whenever they decide to put a road out there, they look at the ground and it's about as flat as this floor, and they say a road would go right here. It'd be perfect. We have these hills and creeks and rocks over here. We got a lot of other things to contend with. And so for us, it's not that simple. We have a lot, and the other thing is as these developments come in that we really have a mandate for approval on, if somebody has 200 acres and they decide to put 200 homes on it, and we're not at the table at the onset on what that looks like, because generally we do some upfront stuff with them, but they don't have to clear those through us, then the last thing we want is to have a planned roadway and have 200 homes put on top of it. And so those were my 3 priorities that I kind of outlined, and I was glad to see that in the prioritization and working with the City of Dripping Springs, working with Campo, working with everyone else, the county came up with a plan as far as roadway expansion and where our prioritization was. I'm gonna let Willie talk about what TxDOT has planned. But the other thing that I would say is, and this is not disparaging at all to TxDOT, but up until about a year ago, I can tell you that we had a working relationship with TxDOT, and while it was a good working relationship, I wouldn't classify it as a great one or one that was truly proactive. And I have to brag on, I'm going to brag on Willie a minute here, because Willie took his job a year ago this month. And I can't go 2 days without getting a call or an email from Willie updating us on what our priorities are with the state. And that doesn't happen. Doesn't happen everywhere. And I'm thankful for it. I can tell you that Willie has proven himself to me, because when it comes to situations, I'll use the situation right here across the road as a perfect example. When Skyridge was built, the county had platting authority on it. The entrances were in TxDOT right away, and by regulation, they didn't need turn lanes. The way they were constructed, they didn't need turn lanes. I, of course, heard from my constituents. The approval for the development went through the City of Dripping Springs. They didn't hear from any of their constituents because they don't live here. I heard from my constituents, and I reached out to the city, and they said, well, we haven't gotten any calls on it. And so I reached out to Willie, myself, Willie, the City of Dripping Springs, Skyridge. we all sat. This was still in the time of Zoom calls due to COVID, but we worked through a process to ensure that one of the entrances was closed permanently, and on the other ones they installed XL and decel lanes, acceleration and deceleration lane. That could not have happened for me as a commissioner. The city could not have mandated that. But through a good working relationship with our partners, we were able to get that done. And I can tell you, having the three of us at the table, the developer could not have been more not only accepting, but how can I get it done tomorrow, which never happens. Because they want their development to be a success, and they want those folks who are going to be your neighbors to go to church here and live here, and their kids are going to go to school here, and it doesn't set them up well for their neighbors if they don't start off on the right foot to start with. With that, I'll turn it back over to Bill, or I'll let Mark say a few things. And it's good to have a neighbor who understands our corridor, even though he doesn't represent here anymore. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm Mark Jones. I'm the Precinct 2 Commissioner. Like Commissioner Smith said, I had Rimrock at one time until redistricting. I'll try to keep mine brief because I know y'all didn't come here y'all came here for a specific purpose, 1826, and that's what we want to discuss. But just give you a little background, and like I said, I'll try to keep it brief. I want to thank Bill and the subdivisions for getting this together. You don't know how much this helps us do our job more effectively, and TxDOT and Campo, when you have an organized effort where you can come with one voice with this many people. So thank y'all for being here. That 60,000 cars a day, there's weekends when I go to Salt Lake, I think I'm behind 60,000 people in the wait line, so I can understand that very much so. And I hope y'all don't take this the wrong way, but I hope any of y'all that parked in the grass, I hope y'all have to be towed out because it got rained on so much. So, all right. And I don't mind helping tow anybody out also. Again, I want to thank y'all for being here, and I want to brag on TxDOT a little bit. In Hays County, we've had a very, very good relationship with TxDOT. I don't know if y'all know in my precinct, we've had several state highways over the last 12 years that have been improved. 1626, SH45. 35, all 967, all those are state highways, but the county participated and partnered with TxDOT to get those done. And so that's what we're looking here at 1826. What can we do to help 1826 get those improvements? And we want to hear from y'all. Like when I represented you a while back, what I was hearing from people is that we don't want a thoroughfare. We don't want 5-6 lanes. We want shoulders, park and turn lanes, and safety improvements. But now we've grown so much. What do you want? Do we want that 5 lanes? Have we gotten to that part where the safety is more important than what some of the aesthetics are? So that's what we want to hear from you tonight. And again, I thank y'all for letting me be here.
All right. Thank y'all, Commissioner Smith and Jones. So my name is William Samora. I do go by Willie. As introduced, I'm the TxDOT area engineer for the South Travis area office as a part of the Texas Department of Transportation Austin District. Is that a huge title or what? Right? Okay, so write that down. No, I'm just kidding. Again, I do represent all of Hays County as it relates to transportation systems that are on the state network for all of planning, or development planning, construction, and maintenance, right? So anything that revolves around our state system, my area office does manage that. So our office is located on south I-35 there, just south of Slaughter. If you ever need us, you can look us up on TxDOT.gov. All of our contact information is there, and I'm sure we'll share that here in a little bit. So I want to, first and foremost, I want to thank Bill and his leadership for gathering the community. This is an outstanding event. Certainly pushes one of our missions at the department to end the streak of fatalities, and that's what we're all here to talk about today. What can we do? What is TxDOT going to do to help reduce or eliminate fatalities, and then ultimately improve the corridor through both Travis County and Hays County? I want to thank all of our guests here. They're all very supportive. Of course, Commissioner Smith and Jones, just thank y'all for the kind words. Ashby is a great partner with Campo, and he'll tell you a little bit about what he does. And then, of course, Representative Zwiener's office, thank y'all for being here. So if you don't mind, would you put my slide up? There you go. So I want to talk a couple of things. I want to start from the beginning. I'm going to kind of go through 1826 and answer some of your questions, hopefully that you may already have on your mind as it relates to short-term, mid-term, and then ultimately long-term. So I'm going to try to categorize three different things: short-term, mid-term, and long-term improvements to 1826 that'll either improve safety to help us meet that goal, or improve mobility to help us move people and goods. Okay, so what I've got shown up here right now is we're going to go through it it's two different slides. We couldn't fit it on one, sorry about that. But we're basically going to talk a little bit about some short-term improvements that we have pending on the 1826 corridor. I want to start down at the 150 end, and I'm going to talk you through everything that we've done or that we have in the books to get implemented to date. At 150 and 1826, as y'all know, not all that long ago, we put a three-way stop condition there. As before, it was not controlled other than on 1826 itself. After some outreach from the Driftwood community and then something very similar to this, we worked with our traffic section and were able to implement that. I hope everybody here really feels that improved the intersection. We've seen nothing but very positive feedback for it and Elder Hill. Not only slowing people down, but also making it feel safe to get out of there. So we feel like that's a success. Moving up the intersection to 967 and 1826. Just so everybody is aware, there's a developer, the Discovery Development, I think is what they call themselves, the golf course and all that's there at the corner. They do plan at some point to improve 1826 they're proposing a roundabout. We don't know exactly how long into the future that is. It all goes back to what Walt was saying as it relates to developers and what they have to do. Certainly can answer some of them questions later if y'all have them, but they do propose a roundabout there. It's a part of their impacts. We just don't know when that's going to happen. So our steps, actually just a week ago, I was able to get a approval for a signal. A signal warrant study was done there, and we did approve a signal for the 1826-967 corridor. Ultimately, signals in the middle of a rural corridor, they're not bad, okay, but they do induce a little delay while also improving safety. So that's our goal. We feel like that's a prudent action there until we can get that roundabout put in at the developer's timeline. So we've got that done. Moving forward, I want to talk a little bit about our Highway Safety Improvement Program. And so actually I'll touch a little bit on federal funding and how CAMPO works with TxDOT to obtain construction dollars. So our Highway Safety Improvement Program is a federal program that we compete statewide. It's gotten a little easier, but essentially we compete statewide with other TxDOT districts for federal money to improve corridors and add safety improvements along certain routes. So this depiction of what you see, we've actually recently approved and have scheduled to let 6 intersections, 4 of which are in Hays County. It's either 3 or 4 are in Hays County. I have them listed here in a second. And then the other 2 or 3 in Travis County. Essentially what we're going to do so it is Shelf Rock. Can you go to the next screen for me real quick? Because they're listed there and I don't have a great memory. Let's see, Lewis Mountain Drive, Zile Road, Appaloosa Run, Gorman Springs, Woodland Drive, and Towering Cedar. So those 5 or 6, of which I think Appaloosa is right on the county line, and then Gorman, Woodland, and Towering are in Hays County. Is that right? I think that's right. Okay. So if you don't mind going back for me, we'll go back to that picture. So those 6 intersections have just recently been funded to improve 1826 to add center turn lanes and right turn lanes, as you see here. So this map kind of depicts by location which ones are going to get a center turn lane, and the 2 higher volume ones, which I believe is Appaloosa and Zile, did support needs for right turn lanes. So you're going to have center turn lane improvement, which is it's a huge improvement, I know, for y'all that live in those communities that have to currently sit in a live lane of 1826 waiting to turn left into your subdivision. That also, to some degree gives you refuge getting out. If you pull out in front of a vehicle, you have that refuge. Not that it's an acceleration lane, but it does give you that refuge and protection. So we're going to get those out to letting, which basically means select a contractor, in the summer of 2023. We're hoping to push that out quicker, so puts us a year and a half away, basically. We've got to get them bid in next fiscal year. For us, a fiscal year is from September, or basically August to August. So coming this next August, or in 3 months, our FY23 cycle starts, and we have to get them done or get them let that year. That's a part of our selection. So that's a huge improvement, I think, that we'll hopefully have on the ground starting their construction around the fall of 2023, and we look to deliver them construct them in about a year turnaround. So, and can you go to the next slide? Sorry. So on other, and this isn't on the list, on other short-term improvements that we've done along the corridor, we recently I'm sure everybody here knows this, had recently done a speed study, reduced the speed limit from 55 to 50, actually worked with Constable Hood, and thanks to Constable Hood and his team for providing us some feedback where we needed some additional signage. We were able to get some additional signage at one more of the major corridor, major intersecting points to the corridor, so that we can communicate that the speed limit along 1826 is 50 miles an hour from 290 to 150. And then the last thing, two other things that we're really working on right now. We're also working with the Fringewood team, the Fringewood Homeowner Association, if any of you are here that live in that area, about working to delineate the center turn lane. I think there's issues and concerns about people using some of the center turn lanes to pass. So we're working right now. As a matter of fact, I did approve a work order for my maintenance team to install delineation at a given interval. We had shared with Glenn. I know I saw Glenn. There's Glenn back there. We shared with him and his group to make sure that they were happy with where we're putting that delineation, and hopefully we'll have some of that installed here in the next 2 to 3 weeks, weather pending, right? Get a little of that rain, right? And then so those are several of the short-term, mid-term type of solutions that we're working on. And I want to talk a little bit about future improvements, which is the ultimate. A lot of questions, I think, are in y'all's mind about what does 1826 look like in the future? What are we going to do to increase that mobility and improve safety in the long term? So on the fact sheet, we have a little bit of information about future improvements, 2 different projects. One is a schematic project, and one is a feasibility project. So they're similar in scope or in nature, but they do mean 2 different things. So currently TxDOT has a selected, if you will, or programmed project to look in developing a schematic from 290 in Travis County to 45. So that schematic, what a schematic does, it identifies the ultimate typical section. It provides a right-of-way footprint. It allows us to go to the public for public comment, get feedback, make any revisions that the public may have that are prudent to the system, and then ultimately seek an environmental clearance, which then lets us move forward with purchasing right-of-way, designing the project or creating the plans for the project, and then getting to a shovel-ready state where we can go talk to Campo about trying to fund a project for construction. So the schematic is a really important piece to that puzzle. It's been on the books for a while in terms of scheduled, but with all the pressure and needs that we see in this area, we've pushed it forward pretty fast. As a matter of fact, we do have consultants currently evaluating schematic stage. I'm not sure that we're quite yet to a 30% schematic, but hopefully in the next, I'm going to say 6 months, and if there's anybody here with the Omega team, the designers, please don't hate me, but we're going to say 6 months or so. Hopefully we're out, 6-8 months, we're out showing the public what that looks like, identifying right away, and then trying to deliver next steps. For Hays County and those that are in this room, this may be more important and prudent to you. From 45 to 150, we're going to do a feasibility study. And essentially a feasibility study is that first step to get to a schematic development. So the feasibility study will, depending on level of effort that we've asked the consultant to do, will identify maybe up to a 20 to 30% schematic that will show us what would a section in Hays County look like with the improvements in Travis County done, the known improvements throughout 290 in different areas. It takes all of that information, compiles it into a solid engineering study, and defines what we need to do section-wise to move forward with a schematic, and then ultimately right-of-way identification, environmental clearance, the next steps for Hays County. So I want to be very clear that while the schematic did have a planned project number with TxDOT, the feasibility study did not. And so the concerns that we've heard from the community, we continue to push that need. I asked, specifically spoke with our team about, we need to start that. We need to make sure that we're moving forward with a plan, being able to deliver a project as quickly as the system allows us to. And so they were, my administration agreed and was gracious enough to say, let's go ahead and get that started. So we're moving forward on short-term, mid-term, and long-term improvements. My staff every day, I've got an assistant area engineer up here with me. He's Mark Bauman, sitting right here. And then we also have our PIO team with us, Brad Wheelis. So these guys help me every day make sure that we're up to speed on what the needs are, what happens out here, and helps us make sure that we can deliver. Our plans change daily, and we just want to make sure that we're here for the citizens and the community. So last few comments I have is this fact sheet. Brad will have a few here. So we've got, I don't know, maybe 50. I don't know that we have one for everybody in the room. Maybe we can get some additional copies. But if you don't get one and you'd like one, we can get them to the HOA presidents. It may even get put online here very soon. So we'll get you a fact sheet if you want to take this home and be able to read through the information. It'll also have our contact information on it, email address and phone number, how to get a hold of us. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ashby.
Thanks, Willie. So a few things. I'll sort of start where Commissioner Smith started, which is, so CAMPO is an organization that is required under state and federal law, and we're required to do really two big things that sort of impact what we're talking about tonight. One is we are required to do a long-range forecast of population and employment out 25 years into the future. And we're supposed to use that forecast to try to predict how many people we think we'll have in our region, but also where those people will live and work. So we cover, as CAMPO, we cover 6 counties here in Central Texas. So Bastrop, Burnett, Caldwell, Hays, Travis, and Williamson counties. So as Commissioner Smith said to you, Hays County, you're one of the fastest growing in the country. I've also got the second fastest, which is Williamson. And then I'm next to another region that's growing as fast as we are, San Antonio. So our boundaries now touch where they used to be, several miles apart. So right now, as a region of 6 counties, we're about 2.2 million people. Our forecast out to 2045 shows us doubling in population to a little over 4 million. I think that number is probably low, based on the growth that we've seen. COVID did not slow down moving into this region. It sped it up, actually. So we, in addition to producing that long-range transportation plan, and that plan encapsulates a lot of the work that you heard Willie talk about in terms of doing project work and doing the analysis. They will come to us as CAMPO and ask to have that included in the document because federally it's required. It's also required under state law. And then once it gets to a point where it is ready for construction dollars, then they will ask my board, and I work for a board of 21 elected officials that cover those 6 counties. They actually allocate federal dollars for our region. And there are several categories of federal transportation dollars. For us, the category that's most relevant is called Surface Transportation Block Grant Funding. And as a region, we get about $38 million a year to cover those 6 fast-growing counties in our region. To give you sort of a sense of scale, Houston gets about 130, 140 million a year in that same dollar. So the variable that triggers how much you get is largely based off population. And because those regions are much larger than ours, they get more money than we do, and that money is distributed by formula, that Congress decides on the formula. So the other thing that we're required to do is produce something called the Transportation Improvement Program. And so that is what I call the action portion of our long-range plan. It covers a 5-year window. Any project that goes into that document has to be ready for construction. It has to have funding, identify it. The analysis needs to be done. If right-of-way needs to be acquired, the process should have been started by the time it goes in. So the board also allocates which year they will go in, so it'll cover that 5-year window, and generally we hope that it will go to construction during the time period that's been allotted. Now, are those documents static documents? No, they are not. So both the long-range plan and that short 5-year range plan are amended twice a year, every year. So in a spring cycle and a fall cycle. So some of the things that Willie just talked about in terms of the feasibility study, in terms of some of the other analysis that TxDOT has now been funded to do and start. So that's one of the first key steps in our process for Campo. So currently, if you look at 1826, in our plan, it shows for construction in 2040, which is a ways out. It doesn't mean it will stay there. So because TxDOT's now got feasibility money and they're working on the analysis, it's probably going to move and move up. So as the analysis is done and funding can be found, then it can move up. So when you look at the plan, don't freak out thinking, there's going to be another 20, 25 years before we see anything. No, that can move how it needs to move as work is done. So we work closely with TxDOT on all the work that we do. We talk to TxDOT several times a week. They're the biggest organization that we deal with. But also, I will tell you, I've got 5 other counties in addition to Hays. Other than Williamson County, Hays is the most aggressive in making sure that, one, their needs are known at Campo and trying to fight for the money, because there's a scarce pot of money that we're dealing with. And Commissioner Jones is on my board, one of my board members, one of the good board members. I hear from him on a regular basis. I hear from Commissioner Smith on a regular basis. That is not the case with all of my board members. Some of them I don't hear from years at a time. Unless I call them, I never hear from them. That's not the case with your 2 commissioners here. They're actually advocating for your needs at Campo every month and making sure that they are in a position to be competitive for the money when it comes forward. So the process, and do we have my slide, please? So part of that process for this talks a little bit about those plans that I told you about. So we go through a process, and it's a competitive process. So they submit the projects, they being different organizations like TxDOT or Hays County or the City of Dripping Springs. So they'll submit projects to us. We have criteria that they have to score against. We produce a composite score. The board takes a look at those scores, and they will set priorities based on the scores. However, the board is the board, and it has the authority to change priorities as they see fit. Because while I'm looking at this sort of numerical process of doing things, there's more to it than just that. And I don't see everything that you see or you see, Commissioner Jones. So that's taken forward. The discussions are had, and then the final priorities are set, and we move forward. So it goes into that long-range plan, and I just explained the project selection process to you, and then project implementation. So the long-range plan, we update it on a major scale every 5 years. The last plan was approved in May of 2020. The next plan is due May of 2025 to meet federal criteria. The shorter range plan, the more action portion of the plan, because we're growing so quickly under federal law, I only have to update it every 3 years. But because we're growing so quickly, we update it every 1.5 years. So we are looking for the next call for projects, because that's when we'll ask for new projects as the funding comes in. That next call for projects will probably be spring of next year. However, and when we do the call, we do 4 years worth of money at one time. However, for I-35, the central portion that goes through downtown, so from 45 to the south to 45 to the north is what the CapEx project is called. The policy board, my board, deferred $634 million worth of projects so that they could kick in money for I-35 and take advantage of $4 or $5 billion worth of funding that TxDOT, the commission, pledged if we could come up with $634 million. It was a great deal for our region, and the board took it. What that means is those deferred projects come first when new money is available. So it doesn't mean there's not going to be any money available for the next 5 or 6 years. It means probably based on where we're seeing revenue coming in from the federal side, and also there's state money that can help offset some of that. We think in the next probably 2 or 3 years at the rate the revenue's coming in, that we'll start funding new projects again. So one of the things I want to do is try to help set expectations tonight. So in our field, 7 or 8 years for a project is not unheard of. It's actually quite common. Sometimes longer than that is quite common. 10 or 12 years can also be common. One of the things I said when we did the groundbreaking for the Wyatt Oak Hill project, when that project started on analysis and started on public outreach, I was a young co-ed at UT with a head full of hair and a 28-inch waist. And we're just getting to construction on that now. So I'm not saying that to you to tell you that 1826 is going to take that long. I don't believe it will. So Willie's really good at what he does, and TxDOT is focused on 1826 as our Campo staff. So we're here to help both your elected officials here and also to help TxDOT advance this project as much as we can. And I have also my public information person here, Doyce Myers, and I also have my lead long-range planner here, Will Liska. Where's Mr. Liska? There he is. And they can answer questions for you as well as I can. So with that, I will close my remarks and hand it back to Mr. Brock.
Thank you very much, Ashby. Thank you all for speaking. Walt here has just a couple of comments. Glenn and Michael, can you go ahead and bring the question sheets up to me? We'll start on the questions from the audience as soon as Walt is finished.
Might let Ron talk. No, I was just going to say, one of the things that each one of these folks touched on was the coordination between Campo and TxDOT and the county. And one of the partners that, while I poked fun at him a minute ago, that would be a partner on this project for us in the overall improvement of 1826 is Travis County. And I can tell you that not long ago, Willie, myself, and not my colleague on the court, but my colleague as a county commissioner from Travis County, who's directly across the line, sat down and talked about how we could better coordinate and work together to try to really present a united front when we go to Campo and ask for those dollars in the future. And so I think that's something that we have to keep in mind as we're talking about this, because we are not in a smokestack here. We're not we're not by ourselves. They're experiencing some of the exact same issues literally a couple miles up the road. And so in the Campo process, as Ashby stated, there are, how many board members do you have? 21 board members. Those board memberships are established by population. To get a seat, you need 50,000. You need a representation of 50,000 people to get a board seat. And so Hays County has at least 50,000 people, we get 1 seat. Travis County has 50,000 people, they get 1 seat. But the city of Dripping Springs, 4, sorry. But my point is that it's most of the things that we deal with when it comes to funding that isn't derived directly from our tax dollars here. It's all some formulaic equation, and most of them are population based. And so I believe overall we are going to start over time having more opportunities to address things simply because of that growth that we're facing head on right now. With that, I'll turn it over to Constable Hood, who represents Precinct 4 here for Hays County.
Thanks, sir. Good evening. Ron Hood, I'm your constable here in Hays County, Precinct 4. Just real quick to give you a little background of the county, 244 square miles. That's Precinct 4 alone. So that Precinct 4 begins at Hamilton Pool Road, north, goes south down to Lone Man Mountain Road, county line east to county line west. It's 244 square miles. To give you a little bit of information about my office, I have 6 officers assigned to my office. Okay. Out of that 6, I have 3 full-time traffic officers. And the only reason I have them is because of 2 of the men that's sitting up here today, commissioners. They supported me in my request for those additional officers. We had a problem on Highway 290. They supported my plea for traffic officers on 290. Last year, they supported my plea for another traffic officer to deal just on the outlining roads. And folks, the growth just kept coming. It just continued to come. So the only means for law enforcement to address this is enforcement. So we're going to address it by putting people on the street, stopping the speeders, stopping the reckless drivers, trying to get people's attention, who are distracted drivers, to cease and desist. Get off that phone, okay? That's the only recourse we have. I'm going to be asking the Commissioners Court again. I'm going to put you on the spot, both of you, always do. I'm going to be asking for additional personnel. I have to. Again, this is the only means that I have to address this issue. I want the public input. I want your support. What I really would like to have is you contact me directly. Let me know when you have a problem, because if you don't speak out, we can't address it. And trust me, with just 3 full-time traffic officers, my phone rings all day requesting their services. So I'm anxious to hear from you what you want and how we can better serve you. I just, from an enforcement perspective, we know what's coming. They're talking about it, but I'm dealing with what's on the road today. So enforcement is our solution, and we're going to be out there fighting and doing the best we can to keep you and your family safe. So I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Ron. If you'll now just give us your cell phone number. Glenn, if you'll come up. Yeah, we have some of y'all signed up to speak. Manta Ganisan. Yeah. Glenn, would you take her this microphone?
Yeah, they've got one.
Press the button.
Better. Thank you, everybody. So my question is there a guideline or a criteria to qualify a subdivision or a property to have a turn lane put on there?
Engineer, not tech wizard. Okay. Great question. So the way TxDOT, and I don't want to speak specifically for the county, I know they have a different plating process, but I don't believe they have the same teeth, I will say, as TxDOT. So the way our process works, we have an access management policy. You can find our access management manual online. Just Google TxDOT access management. You can also find well, you can't find it online, but I can share it with you if you want. Our district, the Austin district, has an access standard operating procedure. But basically, the way we do that at the department is it's scoped off of size of development. So for an example, the Skyridge development, as Commissioner Smith indicated, they were not in a position that they had to do it because of the size of the development and the amount of traffic that it generates. So a developer that comes in and, let's say, does a 50 home subdivision won't generate enough traffic per normal state law and standard access requirements that would mandate he or she build a center turn lane, right turn lane improvement. Now we at TxDOT and myself as an area engineer have taken a little harder stance. We try our best when a development is going in an area, let's say a bad curve either vertically or horizontally. Maybe the driveways are stacked really close together, just different circumstances. We try to push that as a requirement, less the TIA without a traffic impact analysis. But the way our process works is that definition is only if a traffic impact analysis requires it.
So I'm from the Hindu temple next door, and we have 3,000 to 5,000 visitors per month. That takes us to 40,000+ people coming in and staying or visiting as day visitors. We also are located on a slope and a curve coming down from to 967, and we had multiple injuries every month, and just wondering where do we stand to have a turn lane.
And I'm glad you clarified that. So a little more, the reference that I was just making was for new developments. So one of the things that TxDOT is battling, and we, y'all as a community, we as a state agency, the county are battling, are developments that were put in not under those guidelines. So for an example, and I'm not, if the developer that did any of those 6 locations that I referenced earlier is here, I'm sorry, I don't mean anything bad about it. But those locations, if they were installed under today's criteria, would have required center turn lanes and right turn lanes as a part of their driveway permit. What we combat at the department, there is no set number that says for your facility, with the number of traffic, you get a turn lane with federal funding or state funding. Unfortunately, a lot of times that does occur with statistics, with crashes. So we have to go compete for that federal money. Those locations that weren't built with turn lanes when they were originally installed have to then be evaluated and funded through some form of a program. Now, the last thing I will say about that is if anybody in here is a part of a facility that does not have a turn lane today or some improvement, and you have a passion, and again, we're talking wallets now, but you have a passion as a community, as a facility, as a business, as a homeowners association, whatever you're a part of, to build that today, and it's not funded by TxDOT, you can, as a homeowners association or a group, build those improvements, even if it's a small right turn lane, at your expense by donating it to the state. Essentially, you donate an improvement to the state of Texas, and we maintain it for its life. I know that may sound odd. You're probably thinking, why would I pay for that? But it's happening all over the state of Texas. That's how every developer puts them in now, and ultimately the initial expense may be a sticker shock, but the value of it long-term, people are seeing. So.
Thank you very much. Judy Sarur.
Several people have asked me about the flashing radar speed limit signs, like this is your speed, and this is the speed limit it's supposed to be. And what is the feasibility of getting at least 2 of those on 1826? And what would it take?
I'm going to clarify that a little bit. On Nutty Brown Road, when you're going to 290 from this area, there's that flashing light near the prep daycare center, I think it is. And that slows me down every time. And I think we're going to need 3 or 4 of these within a short stretch here, because that's the only way you can put up 50 miles an hour. They're still going to go 60. And if it's on the hill, they can go 70, right up the hill here. So these are things we've been talking about long term, and that's great. And I understand it was in development for a long time. Short term is what's going to save lives. Short term is what's going to help people drive better and not as many injuries. And we have had a lot of injuries on this road over the last 3 or 4 years. So we need to find out how we can get those things. And again, the person that owns that said he went through his records, he never paid for it. So we're just trying to get information on that.
So I'll take that one as well. On the state right-of-way, there's not currently a policy that allows TxDOT, and keep in mind, we're governed as a state body and an agency that has a commission that dictates what we can and can't do. There's not a policy right now that explicitly allows us to pay for those radar feedback signs on state right-of-way. Most of what you see at least in our circumstances, are either a local government, and I don't want to put Hays County on the spot, but a local government supporting that, a city, or a homeowners association. Basically the example I just gave about paying for those improvements, putting them out there for the department as a part of a measure that they want to do. I know that I've reached out, the Friendswood Homeowners Association, and has spoke with me about doing that. I have not gotten a good number yet. I'm trying to share a number of what those cost, and I'm just not quite there. But if somebody in the community is looking to do that at specific locations, or if Hays County is wanting to support something like that, we can look at various options.
Thank you, Willie. Maria Leconte, Skyridge.
I'm sure you could.
I'm going to have to apologize I got about 15 minutes before I have to go to another meeting.
Okay, I understand there's a protocol with improving, the safety and concerns because you're a state government. But given all the accidents that have occurred, is there like an emergency thing that you can do to rectify the situation?
Have meetings like this.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Bill said have meetings like this. That is a great point. Get feedback, and I will point out that those 6 intersections that I showed on the board, usually in the normal Highway Safety Improvement Program process, HSIP process, it takes anywhere from 3 to 5 years to get a project funded, designed, and delivered. I pointed out to, I'm not taking credit for this, these guys up here helped me point out to our district team that we needed those projects at those specific 6 locations today. So they were submitted 4 months ago. I believe maybe like 8 months ago, I think we went out to meet with the Lewis Mountain Ranch Homeowners Association. And so about 8 months ago, we said we're going to commit to do that. We submitted them for funding. They were selected, and we're delivering them in less than a year. So I don't know that you'd call that an emergency process, but that's certainly expedited.
I'll just tell you, that's very fast in TxDOT terms. That's extremely fast.
Thanks, Ash.
And I'll just add, those emergency funds, or what TxDOT has available for those, are spread out throughout the state of the whole state of Texas. So because you may have the worst or the most accidents in Hays County, you're competing against Harris County or some other county, so it's very competitive. And I will say, TxDOT, I don't think they've had a increase in the gas tax since 1991 is the last time they've been able to have an increase in the gas tax. And since 91, cars are getting more miles per gallon, and so you're having cars travel more miles on less dollars that they're getting. So they're like every other government entity. They're strapped, and they do the best they can with what funds they do get allotted.
Thank you. Joanna Solinger.
So since we've been talking about safety, and we've seen what's been happening in Bastrop with fires, how are you going to address fire safety and evacuations with a road that has so many developments and so many people traveling on there? If there was to be an evacuation, how would this be handled?
I could try to help address that. So many of y'all, especially the newer residents who've only been here for a couple of years, may not know that, in the state of Texas, we can't even adopt a fire code until we're either adjacent to or have a county that has 250,000 people in it. Municipalities can, but counties could not. And so in 2020, in I guess November of 2019, Hays County adopted the International Fire Code for implementation starting in January 1 of 2020. And so when we look at things, and I don't know how many of y'all have lived here, or for how long, but I can tell you, right next to Rimrock, the 3 neighborhoods that are there that back up to the temple, those neighborhoods have been evacuated before because of fire, because of wildland fire. And we deal with it all over the county. We at the county have made a commitment with our transportation department and with our development services department to ensure that those roadways, you don't see, some of the roads that y'all live on you'd never see in Hays County again. The state would never allow us to go back retroactively and mandate that those roads that might be 16, 20-foot roads be redeveloped. How we get folks in and out of there, they met the regulations that were there at the time. How we get them out of there now, we have to be forward-looking in that. So we're trying to do that. On to the roadway itself, and I'm going to have to defer to Willie on the actual volume and knowing how much volume it can take. But we have to look at those incidences on a daily basis, whether it's fire, whether it's any type of emergency management. We have to be able to get those people out no matter what. And so we have one of the, I don't know if you know this, but and I'm proud of our county, very proud when it comes to emergency management. We actually were named, our emergency management division was named as kind of I don't know, they're not a rising star, but kind of the gold standard for our entire region and how to impact those situations, specifically because of the reactionary work that we did during the flooding in 2015 and since that time. And so what I can tell you as far as getting in and out of those neighborhoods, it's we have people moving into houses, and I'll use an example. I had someone in my office 2 weeks ago who came in and they said, I'm really concerned about flooding and fire where I live. And I said, I would be too. Let's talk about where you live. I live down a one-lane road that has 50 homes on it, and there's 2 low water crossings. This is to the west of Dripping. There's 2 low water crossings, and there's 50 homes in there. And I said, okay, when did you move there? They said, well, we moved there 3 years ago. And I said, well, and this sounds very cold and callous, and I apologize. But I said, were there 2 low water crossings when you went and looked at the house? Were there 50 homes in there when you built? And the answer was yeah, or whenever you bought, the answer was yes. And so what we are trying to do from a development side, since we don't have a lot of teeth, is trying to mitigate not necessarily those roadways that have those 50 on them already, but if there is some place going in that is on that one-lane road, we require TIAs. We do things like that because we don't want a situation where on that one-lane road, you've got 200 homes going on that were never anticipated.
These developments that have been here for 20 and 30, or these houses that have been here for 20 and 30 years, and then you have all this development within the past 10 years. And a lot of these have one road in and one road out, but yet there are no fire access roads, or relief roads where people can just get out if they had to evacuate. Are developers being held accountable to make sure that they have some sort of evacuation plan, just in case?
I would agree. And actually, one thing that we haven't talked about tonight, that we actually did as a county, when did we do how many of y'all are in Rimrock? How many of y'all attended the meeting we had with Rimrock HOA on fire? There's several members here. There is a service through the Texas A&M University system, and it's called the Fire Safe Community. And if you live in one of those existing developments, or you live in one of those existing neighborhoods, and you're truly concerned about, the biggest problem we have over on this side is fuel storage. I mean, 60 years ago, all this would burn off every few years, right? Then you put houses there, and you actually get true emergency services and fire services, and you purposely prevent a lot of that. Well, when you do that, you get massive fuel loads in those communities. And so one of the things that A&M does, and it's a free service that they'll come out, they will do an overall evaluation of your neighborhood, your entire community. They'll look for fire lanes, they'll look for water access. They'll make recommendations relative to what you should do in your community. Do you need fire lanes? Okay, we're not going to be able to get a fire truck in here. You're not going to be able to get out. How do we do that? One thing I will say that I don't know how many of y'all live in communities that are in the ETJ or the extraterritorial jurisdiction of the city of Dripping Springs, but they are very adamant in their development planning, and they have a lot more teeth than we do as a county when it comes to development planning. They can tell you how wide your lot can be, all that kind of stuff that we don't have the ability to do at the county. What they are preaching to every one of the developments that is in their ETJ is connectivity. We want multiple connections to your next door neighbor's neighborhood. We want 2 roads that go that cross the property, not just one. We want, and I can tell you that in the past, communities right here have fought that. I mean, wholeheartedly. And within the last 4 years, I mean, the perfect example is Radiance up the road. You know, whenever the improvements were done to the bridge at Radiance, and when Rimrock was built, they fought wholeheartedly against the connection just past the bridge there.
Well, you know those Rimrock people. We didn't want them.
It wasn't in the original platting. That's what I said. It wasn't in the original platting. And you know, whenever there's a large venue going in on that roadway. And I can tell you that I've gone to public meetings, the HOA meetings at the yurt, and talked to them, and there has been a massive change in a lot of the folks there who now have actually approached me and said, how can we talk to our neighbors, or how can we talk to the ranch to our north or to our west about getting connectivity in and out of our neighborhood? And in the past, that wasn't anything that a lot of the neighborhoods wanted, because they wanted that solitude. And so it's been interesting to watch that change even over the last 8 to 10 years.
Also, Firewise is a good community program. If you haven't heard about it, you can look it up. Next, William Schofield.
Thank you. I'm in Reunion Ranch. When I drive south on 1826, there's a turn lane right in the middle. I can pull in there, wait for my chance to turn left into Reunion Ranch, and that's a safe access. If I'm heading north, I don't have that. I have to pull off out of the lane. There is a little bit of a shoulder, get onto the shoulder, so I don't get rear-ended. But I don't understand why there isn't a middle turn lane in both directions. And I don't understand why there isn't that same middle turn lane for all the other developments, including, you've mentioned Skyridge tonight multiple times. First time I tried to turn into Skyridge, I just about got rear-ended. There was no place to turn. Now there's a little bit of something on the right-hand side. There's nothing in the middle. I don't understand how that's safe access in any direction. For Skyridge, Reunion Ranch, if I'm heading north, or any of the other developments that are going in now. I think that's a problem.
Well, your question is precisely why we're here tonight, because your subdivision is not the only one who has those issues.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. And I would add, I didn't mention in my presentation, but actually today got approval, hopefully you like this, that Reunion Ranch does meet signal warrants, and we're going to look at signalizing its intersection to help control traffic movement. So, but to explicitly answer your question first, as we addressed a while ago, not every development warrants those needs. Every developer, if you're a part of the development community, you would know that generally speaking, there are concerns over those extra expenses, and while we all may view safety as we should measure to dollars, they do, and my goal is to push the message that it shouldn't be. We don't always win. I think Skyridge was a win, I really do. It goes back to the TIA, it goes back to the amount of homes that were built on each driveway and what they would have been required to do long term, which could have been nothing. So I think as a whole, I take the mission that with a developer, when I'm working, I push as hard as I can, and I get something is better than nothing. And with Reunion Ranch explicitly, it's not on this list because as a right turn movement, as you probably know, our significant concern, while a rear end is not good by any means, our significant concern would be the left turn T-bone collision that creates that potential fatality. And so there's more value in building the left turn lanes at intersections from the state's perspective and using use of federal money than to go build a right turn lane to Reunion Ranch. It goes back, if Reunion Ranch as a whole, as a homeowners association, is passionate about that, certainly be willing to talk about how you could add that.
And quick
As a
follow-up
final
question.
statement, what we could say is eventually we're looking at resolving that issue for all of the subdivisions along 1826. I mean, we know that's a problem, and the only solution is probably going to be a 4-lane divided road for the whole length of the highway, and hopefully that will people will vote for that, and we can have that. Let me just say that one of the things that we're going to be faced with is how to fund this. The county in the past has passed bond issues for improvements along 12, improvements closer to Dripping Springs. But we may be faced with a bond issue for doing some highway work here. And I'm not saying, we should do that or not do that. I just want you all to keep that in your mind, that we need to think about ways that this is going to get funded, assuming the federal government and the state government are not going to do all of it, which is probable. All right, the next question is from Glenn in Friendship Ranch.
Hello? Oh. Hi, I'm the other Glenn in Friendship Ranch. I know you can't address all my questions tonight, but I guess my biggest thing that I didn't really hear a whole lot about is alternatives to 1826. Are there any plans for a parallel road, possibly farther south here, so it can divert some of the traffic that's going farther down, maybe to 967?
So I may ask Ashby or Commissioner Jones to chime in. In terms of TxDOT's plans, there are no parallel routes or bypasses or modifications to any of or new routes, I should say, that would relieve or otherwise take traffic off of 1826. Currently, the goal, of course, is we do have a schematic under development to improve 290 as well from the Y out. So changing and modifying 290s where it has more capacity, better mobility, better higher level of service, and then doing the same on 1826 at the same time to help get people out to the western side of our district and out into the hill country. But of course, the county does have a master plan, which...
Hope you don't do it at the same time, because
Yeah.
that'll just make it even worse.
Right. Part of our master plan, and since I've been commissioner in 2010, we've looked at a way to connect 967 somewhere between 1826 and 1626 in the middle. Our ultimate goal was to connect it to escarpment, and the city of Austin blocked us from being able to do that. So we have looked at those plans. It's in our transportation plan, so we're trying to see how, if there's an alternate way of doing it. But Austin has followed us every bit of the way in trying to make that connection.
Okay, thanks.
So as part of the work that we do as CAMPA, we also look at the regional network, and we look to the previous question about evacuation. Because of where we're situated in the state, we have to be able to receive evacuees from Houston and Corpus Christi. So we have to be able to accept those people in, but we also have to worry about getting people out from the west in case of fire. So when we look at the network, we look at redundancy in the system to see if we can get people out and have more than one way to get them through. As Commissioner Jones said, one of the things we suggested a few years ago as part of our analysis was connecting escarpment, because it was a way out and it provided another route, and we were fought tooth and nail by the city of Austin on that. Doesn't mean we're going to walk away from that. The line is still on there, and the board voted to keep the line on there. So, we'll keep doing the analysis and keep doing the work.
All right, we have 3 more questions. These are Denise McClone, Marie Thomas, and then Steve Myers. Denise?
Is there any idea of when any of this can begin, like with TxDOT and Campo coordinating, so that we would have some kind of an idea whether I want to move out of here or I want to stay, and maybe I'll live long enough to see some of this happen this time?
Our grandchildren.
Yeah, exactly.
So I won't speak for Ashby and Campo. I'll certainly let him address that. But I will tell you that on the schematics and feasibility study, we're really pushing hard. As a matter of fact, really accelerating those projects to try to deliver some form of a public deliverable. Come out, show you what we're doing, how much money we're talking about, get comment in the next year, 18 months. We're really trying to get those plans fine-tuned on that side because we can't move forward. Next steps, again, I discussed right away, environmental clearance. We can't do those things without coming to you first and getting your feedback. And as always, Bill's got my phone number now, so in the next 6 months or so, we make some headway on what some of this is going to look like, and I'd be happy to come back out and show you again.
And I think Ashby mentioned this earlier about the expectations. I hope this isn't the what happens on 1826, but the improvements we made on 1626 took us nearly 20 years from the time we started. But I will let you know that 1826 is a high priority with the county, and you've heard Ashby talk earlier about shovel-ready projects. The sooner that this becomes a shovel-ready project, the higher it goes up on the list, because when those funds come in, the people providing those funds, the agencies providing those funds, want to see construction on the ground. They don't want to see they don't want to see the underground, the engineering part of it. They want that already done. So the sooner you can get that engineering done, the right-of-way purchased, and the thing that takes the longest is the environmental process. That's the biggest holdup. A lot of these. Do you want to? Okay.
Thank you all.
Bill, real quick. Willie Rivera here with Reunion Ranch HOA. I wanted to kind of pivot a little bit because there's a lot of conversation with TxDOT, and that's great. I'm more of a private sector guy to move a little faster on things. So to the constable, sheriff's constable, thank you for being here. One, thank you very much because you guys are always very responsive to the community that I represent truly, and we know you're short-staffed. With that said, is there a specific FTE number whenever you do put a request in for another deputy? Is there a specific number? And I'm sure there is. I know there is. And I'm not even asking for you to give it to me, but we have 10 communities up this quarter right here in 1826. I'm not sure if they all have an HOA. I know Reunion Ranch does, and clearly Rimrock, and some other ones that are probably still in development are not owned by the community yet, still managed by the developers. But if there's a number that we do know we need to get to, say from a private funding standpoint, in June, for instance, we're doing our budget. If I need to ask the community to support, hey, we're going to add $12,000, $15,000 to be part of our budget that's designated to a specific fund that goes to the 4th Precinct office in order to be our contributing neighborhood to the salary, benefits, the cost to have a new deputy or a deputy full-time on the 1826 Nutty Brown 967 kind of corridor right there. Because I heard you mention that you asked for resources in specific spots. If we were to fund that, is that a realistic option for us to do?
That would, yes, that would be a negotiated item between the community and the Commissioner's Court. You would actually go to Commissioner's Court, your representatives would go and make the case to the commissioners. I currently have a part-time deputy that is in the community of Belterra. Belterra pays that officer's salary. The county picks up the equipment and the benefits for the officer. Okay. So there is an option there. I want you to know, ladies and gentlemen, you live in a great community. Yeah. You all know that. I hope you do. It's a safe community. We do have some concerns. I'm like you. I pay taxes here. It concerns me to see our tax dollars and how it's being spent. I'm all about safety. I want to provide you the best safety. But I'm also conscientious of the amount of money it's going to cost. One officer, just to fund that one officer, is about $100,000 a year. Now that's for the officer's salary, his benefits, and the equipment. Obviously, after you purchase the equipment, it depreciates over time, so that cost goes down. But it is expensive. So if it's something that this community or your community would like to do, to participate in, absolutely. The county has the precedent set for that. We can do that for you. We can provide you that service.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate it. And I do want to point out, just, from the radar signs that were mentioned earlier, our community just bought 2 of them for inside the community, $3,700 each.
How much?
$3,700. Flashy signs, even put little letters on the bottom, you're going too fast, kids at play. $3,700 each that they attach onto an existing speed limit sign. The only thing, we had to sign off and indemnify the county that if someone breaks it, we have to pay for it, which is fine. That whole process from order to delivery, 3.5, 4 weeks. It's distracted drivers. The radar signs are great, but 1826, those things are happening because of distracted drivers. So the more presence we get from you on 1826, that I think is going to help us more than a radar sign, just in my opinion.
Thank you.
Just 2 things real quick. Since it's on the state highway, on the radar, the flashing signs, you'd work with TxDOT to get those approvals. But as far as adding, Commissioner Constable Hood said, we've done those programs with subdivisions. Belterra is a good example, Wood Creek. We've never done it for a stretch of road, but I don't think that would be a problem. So if that's something that y'all would want to move forward, I would recommend you meet with Commissioner Smith and Constable Hood on how to work that out.
Thank you all. Marie Thomas? Up here.
All right. I live in Goldenwood, 20 years. I have the salon right on the road here. I have tried to contact people about the situation because I watch it every day. I'm right at Nutty Brown and 1826, the highway. I was passed to his regard with the traffic things. Definitely more signs and maybe a flashing light. I was passed on 1826 at the top of Fox Run, going 48 miles an hour in my Tundra. Anyway, so my question is now, because a lot of it has already been answered or questioned before, TxDOT, I've been in many of these meetings before. Last time we requested, when the Shell station was put up, what would warrant a light there? And they said, well, it didn't warrant it yet. Would a fatality? Yeah, it didn't take 6 months. And a fatality was there. So Skyridge, how was 3 entrances? You say it goes by population or the amount of buildings that are being put up. How did 3 entrances get approved with no left turn lanes? And number 1, when there's a fatality there, are they going to now move up the warranty list so we get left turn lanes there? I've seen it before.
It's a great question. So, absolutely, as an agency, we have to monitor patterns. We have to identify needs and address those needs. We as engineers do the best we can to work with the developers. It goes back to the developer question, to forecast through a traffic impact analysis to determine what they need to ensure those driveways are safe. That includes site distance studies. That includes signal warrant studies, left turn lane analysis, right turn lane analysis. All of that data goes into a TIA.
I understand those studies were done during COVID and entrances to Skyridge.
So the Skyridge development project was approved before I became the area engineer. They had their driveway permits. It would have been right as COVID started. So not full COVID traffic. But that data, so I want to be very clear, COVID has nothing to do with a TIA. A TIA is predicted data based off of trips that a home will generate So there are manuals, and I don't want to get super technical with you, but there's data that an engineer pulls and says if there's one home, that one home is going to generate a number of trips per day. And if there's 30 homes, those homes are going to generate X number of trips a day. And the engineer has to determine, are those citizens that live in there, are they going to Austin? Are they going to Dripping Springs? Are they going to to San Marcos? Where are they going for directional distribution to determine how are they coming in and out of the subdivision to warrant those improvements? Now, absolutely, we would not sit idle by if you started to have fatalities and not try to address the concern. Would that triggered? What's that?
Move up the warrant list?
No, I mean there is that. So there currently is no warrant list for the left turn lane improvements. There's no warrant list for that. A warrant is only for a traffic signal. That's right. And so we as an agency would certainly do what we can to address it, but I would also be very clear with everybody here, not that this would happen, but every developer knows that they take a driveway permit. It says if your driveway becomes unsafe, we have the right to close it. Would TxDOT close Skyridge's entrances? Absolutely not. But we would certainly go back to the homeowners association or the developer and say, we have a problem, let's try to address it as a team, right? But we would not sit idle by if there's incidents, if there's crashes, if there's a rash of concerns, if the developer or the homeowners association is not willing to participate, we would do what we could to deliver improvements.
Okay, well, there's no traffic speed limit signs. I live in Goldenwood, pulling out of there, which a lot of Rimrock people use also. There's no traffic signs all the way down until past Nutty Brown Road. So, like I said, I was passed on the top of the hill going 48 miles an hour, and the guy behind me, I mean, I don't pull out of Goldenwood irresponsibly. I mean, if they're coming around the corner, I don't pull out.
So hopefully I'm in the same area you are, but what I was discussing a while ago is a short-term improvement where we're going to do delineation in the center turn lane. I don't know that, so it'll start at basically Nutty Brown Road. We're going to delineate, positive, we call them candlesticks, the things that the dummy sticks, whatever you want to call them. Okay, there you go. You could say that, Commissioner. I can't.
Idiot sticks.
All right. So we're going to install at various intervals from Nutty Brown Road past the Friendswood entrance, just a little ways back up the next hill to try to keep people from passing in that turn lane.
Yeah, because they pass, they get into the left turn lane into Nutty Brown at this church.
Sure.
I watch them.
Absolutely.
Every day.
and it is certainly, if you, Ron Hood, Commissioner Hood, Councilman Hood, you could, yeah, right. You could attest to this, but it's not it is an illegal movement, as you all know, to use a turn lane as a passing facility. We're just going to do what we can to make it safer.
Thank you very much, Marie. Steve Myers.
She's going to be on it too. Her name was called. Steve?
Yeah, my question is not for Hays County. It's for the beginning of 1826. As it comes off of 290, you have 2 left turn lanes there. And unless you're going to the hospital, there's only 1 lane to go to. How long is that going to last?
Let me get back to you. So, of course, as you all know, the Y project is actively making improvements through the 1826 intersection. So the Y will adjust operations of 290 into 1826. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend to speak too intelligently about that. I can show you some pictures if you want. That's a design-build contract that we have with Colorado River Constructors, as y'all have probably seen. And so they are currently designing those improvements. But what you see out there today will constantly be changing through the next 3 to 4 years as we build out portions of the Y project, improving and ultimately getting to that final configuration for that intersection.
We have about 10 more people who have wanted to ask questions. If some of you need to go, then head on out. Dwayne Kripe.
Thanks for allowing us to have the question and answer session. I have the fortunate of being able to leave work mid-afternoon periodically to come home and then go back into town if we go have dinner or whatever. And I've seen this incredibly long line of cars from Nutty Brown all the way up to the bottom of the steep hill just south of JD's. And I didn't know if there was any tactical activity to help these poor people out who are stuck in the line for, half an hour longer as far as coming back home from work.
Yeah, yes, sir. So, as a matter of fact, about 3 weeks ago, I stopped at the Nutty Brown signal myself with our traffic section, our district traffic engineer, and they're looking at ways to optimize that signal and adjust its timing to give more time to 1826. But just real quick, so everybody knows, a signal works it's a big circle. So it's built to have so much time for an optimum cycle to go from 1826, Nutty Brown Road, 1826 the other direction, and then back. It works like a loop. And so when you take some time away from one portion of the loop, it affects operations. So we're trying to see what we can do without making Nutty Brown Road worse than 1826. But we are looking at adjustments. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Jen Cohen. Michael.
Thank you. So I have driven down 1826, obviously, and 1626, and it sounds like ultimately what you're proposing is to make 1826 look similar to 1626. Just doing some quick research, it looks like our road is currently about 25 feet wide, whereas 1626 is 75 plus feet wide, and correct me if I'm wrong on that. But is your right-of-way acquisition going to involve taking property out of rimrock backyards?
So that's a great question. We don't know the answer to that yet. What we'll do in the feasibility and schematic stages is optimize both our typical section for the best possible mobility by limiting the amount of right-of-way purchase and ultimately more so the amount of any displacements, right? So we will, I don't like to say zigzag, but we will do what we have to do to use pieces of property or purchase pieces of property that are less impactful. But keep in mind, in an environmentally sensitive area, you have to think about, do you have preserves? Do you have to deal with sections of the aquifer? Are there trees, a number of trees that come into that you can't take out? So unfortunately, I don't have that answer for you today, but our footprints, feasibility studies that will come back to you and ask you to make comments on, we'll show you that data, and you'll have the opportunity to say, hey, I don't like this. What can you do to fix it?
And just following up on that, since you actually mentioned trees, there are quite a few trees along the road right now that help with noise, in the subdivisions. So if those trees are being taken out, is there anything that TxDOT is going to do to help with noise mitigation, or will that be up to the neighborhoods?
So every FHWA requires that when we do mobility projects that add operations, the environmental study that we do is required to evaluate noise impacts. So what we'll do as a part of that project is we'll set, and I'm trying to talk as intelligently as I can about it, but we'll set receptors out in the property within the given range that the federal government says you have to check that noise hasn't changed. They'll evaluate that information, and our environmental specialists will decide, as a part of that project, do we need to build noise barriers and noise walls? Similar to like what you would see along MOPAC. There are noise walls along MOPAC. So again, that will all be determined as a part of that schematic and environmental clearance.
And you mentioned 1626, so that's one of the things that did come up. They did the study, and it didn't warrant TxDOT building those things, but we did have noise complaints from our leisure woods, and what came back, if they wanted the noise barriers, then that subdivision would have to provide them. But they will do the study. If it meets the study requirements, then they would do it. But if it doesn't, they won't build them.
Yeah, and that's a great point, because as 1826 continues to grow, we're building a facility to accommodate your needs, and again, safety and mobility. If at the time of the study it doesn't warrant, that essentially means that the department, TxDOT, is not responsible federally to build those, to pay to build them, and to maintain them. So I get a lot of requests after the fact for noise walls. what can you do to build a noise wall? And generally our policy, unless it changes in the future, right now is that we don't do after the fact noise studies. That's when it becomes the homeowner association or private responsibility.
I think the new law is that for subdivisions on either side of the road, to determine which one gives up right away, they just arm wrestle. I'm sorry, a little facetious there. Perhaps one solution might be to plant shrubbery and figure out a way to get it watered. All right, the next person up, Lucinda Capral.
Oh, who's Lucinda? She's going. Are you going first? Okay. My name is Lori Sanders, and my question is, I am at 275 Lotus Circle, which is across the street from the Skyridge entrance, down at the base of the hill on 1826. And we have 3 businesses in there that all involve children. There's All Stars Academy, which is my child care center that has ages 2 to 5. There is Austin Sports Academy, which has after-school children. And there's also Champions Gymnastics, which has anywhere from, I think, ages 3 or 4 up to high schoolers. Anyway, within the week, there are more than 1,000 cars that come in and out of our entrance alone. And my question is, now that Skyridge has put that entrance directly across from us, we have constant cross traffic that's coming in, going left or right, either way, and you're coming down a blind hill, which has caused, I think, 2 or 3 accidents in the last 4 weeks. One of which was not a deadly accident, but that's the one that Starflight or the flight landed in our parking lot. I went out there to help attend that accident, and there were several people very badly hurt in that accident due to a head-on collision, due to people turning left into Skyridge. So how do I ensure the safety when we've got more than 1,000 cars driving with children in and out every single week? How do I ensure safety to my parents or any of the other businesses that have children from the elementary schools that are delivering children to Austin Sports Academy? So we have a real problem because we've all been there 9.5, 10, 11 years, and we didn't get asked an opinion. I believe our landlord went to the commissioner's office and we were told that 3 people had to die before anything would happen. So does that involve taking our children's lives? Or how are we going to fix that? Because Skyridge has created a real problem for us with the left-hand turns either way. So we're just worried about our kids and everyone on 1826 because people speed unbelievably, and all the construction trucks, they can't see and they cannot stop coming down that blind hill. It's the same situation that Lewis Mountain deals with when you stop and you have to turn left into Skyridge development. So we're just very concerned and trying to find answers to help ensure the safety of our children.
Absolutely. Absolutely, and appreciate that concern. And so I've actually had a conversation, I'm not sure if it was with you or with an owner of the facility, but committed to TxDOT is not saying the 6 that are on this list are the only 6 we're ever going to do on 1826. We'll continue to evaluate. It goes back to the funding comments I made, and I understand none of that is related to a life, whether an adult life or a child's life, 100%. But we'll continue to evaluate that. If there is something that your facility or your owner wants to discuss now as it relates to options, and get with Skyridge, and maybe we have a quick meeting as a team with Commissioner Smith and discuss next steps, I'm happy to do that. We'll continue to evaluate whether we can fund it federally, but unfortunately sitting here right now tonight, I don't have an answer that says we're prepared to build a turn lane at that entrance.
Thank you. That's a concern we all have. George Pratt.
She was next.
Hello. I have a question about when is it time that we can put in our ideas about how, you talk about the vertical and the horizontal, like curves, because I know when they worked on Nutty Brown Road, they took out some of the depth of the dips and some of the curves, and which improved the safety without taking the character totally away from Nutty Brown Road. So I was wondering how we put it, our ideas in.
I don't want to speak for Nutty Brown, but for 1826, as it relates to, making comments on the future alignment and how does it look, and that will all come with that public outreach portion of the schematic and feasibility study. So that's still coming forward. What we always do is we come to the community with options and say, this is what fits your need for mobility and safety. Now you tell us what you want it to look like aesthetically, long-term, environmentally, what are your concerns, and of course related to your property.
And the same thing with county. Whenever we start doing the engineering and design, part of that's public outreach. You can come to the open houses. They're also virtual, online also, and that goes a long way. And you can always, like I said, on the county road, just speak to your commissioner.
All right, thank you.
So once TxDOT has gotten through the schematic and design, and they ask for those projects to be included in Campo's plans, those plans then go out for another round of public comment. So you'll have a chance to comment then as well.
Thank you. George Pratt. Has he left? Okay. Paula Pratt, also left. Clint Giles.
I've had frontage here on 1826 for 26 years, so I've seen a lot of this growth. One thing, there were two things. One, how is it you prioritize? Because I see all this improvement on 967, and I know 967 doesn't have near the traffic that we have on 1826. So why did 967 get funded before 1826? Same with Nutty Brown. I mean, I saw it get funded years ago, and 1826 has always been the growth corridor. And the second, one more point. During this growth phase, I've been around the construction industry for years. You're building a house, you've got 5 or 6 subcontractors there a day that are coming back and forth, versus once the people move in, you might have 2 cars twice a day coming in and out. So I see this every day where the construction trucks and trailers are running off the edge. They're causing all kinds of problems. At Ron Hood, I'd like to see you target those guys just so they get the word out there that, hey, construction, we need to slow it down. We need to be more aware, because I think that's probably half the accidents are related to construction trucks.
So your first question, and it may lead on Commissioner here a little bit, but separate the two. So regionally, TxDOT looks at our entire program with Campo to determine our needs. Again, as the South Travis area engineer, I have Hays County and half of Travis County. So I've got improvement projects that we're looking at on 290, on 620, of course the I-35 South job that Ashley just referenced, that's in my office. But we look at the plan as a whole. 967, while it is a state roadway, was a locally pushed initiative, goes back to Bill's comment about the aggressive Hays County bond program and what they've done to meet the needs of their citizens on some of the roadways like 967. I know as my first year as area engineer, I've gotten a lot of concerns about a lot of roads, but the two that I got a lot about or comments about were always 12 and 290 and 967 and 1626, right? And so that 967 project was a local initiative to make sure that we improved. The county came to us to improve 967 to help move people through that intersection, and then also service better safety for Dahlstrom and the middle school, high school there for Buda. I don't know if you want to. So just different plans, two entities that stick them together to try to deliver safety and mobility improvements.
And again, just us coming together like this is the first time this area has really raised its head or raised its hand to try to, make some changes. Other parts of the county have been more vocal than we are. All right. Ted Halliwell? Halliwer? David Anderson. Mary Arana. Well, any other questions from anybody?
Okay, so I was going to ask what those deterrents were that y'all were putting in. So my comment on that, coming out of Friendship Creekside, when you go left, y'all put in like a little, kind of like the left turn lane. It was awesome for parents. You could turn out and like wait a minute, turn your right blinker on, and then like move over. It made getting out of the neighborhood a lot easier. And then deterrents were put up. And then you had to sit like 10, 15 minutes during school time, like trying to get left out of Friendship, because you no longer had that spot. You now had to wait for both lanes to be free. So those deterrents are actually super annoying. And my parents live on 1626. They've been there over a decade in Lakeway. And it used to be beautiful, awesome. It was easy to navigate. Those deterrents got put up, y'all. I go up there, I have to make U-turns constantly on 620. And I really hope 290 and 1826 are not going to start looking like 620. Those deterrents, for me, cause me a lot of anxiety. I meet up with my parents up there, and I'm trying to take a left. There's all these deterrents. I have to go all the way down here, make a U-turn on 620, which is not fun, to be able to go meet up with my parents. Like, I really, oh my gosh, when I heard y'all say that, that made me nervous. So anyways, just huge, please, I would much rather have Ron Hood and some other people sitting at the bottom of those hills where people use the turn lane to pass, to pull them over. Stop doing it, stop doing it, stop doing it, than having the deterrents, because I don't think that makes it safer, and I don't think it makes the roads more accessible. And then my question is, are y'all gonna put a left turn lane just the entire way down 1826? Y'all, there are so many businesses, so many neighborhoods, and it feels like, looking at this, y'all are cherry picking the places that you're gonna put it, and that's gonna help some people, but that's not gonna help us overall. It would be so much better if we could have a left turn lane from start to finish of 1826. Is that something that y'all are looking at doing? And if so, what is, oh, sorry, I have a little baby. What is your timeline on that? Because it would help so much. My daughter goes to All Stars Academy, and I will get backed up so far. Like, I have sat turning right from the, like, anyways, I've sat all the way back at that light trying to get into school. And it's taken me 15 minutes to get from the light at Nutty Brown in 1826 to All Stars 26, which is what, probably half a mile? No, a quarter mile? That's ridiculous. Like, please, give us a left turn lane or something. So what is your time frame on a left turn lane from the beginning to end on 1826? Do you have one? Is that a game plan for you?
Yes, what you're talking about are specifics of the design that is going to happen. And as they have pointed out, they're doing a lot of studies right now, feasibility, schematics, and so forth. Then they're going to come, the process is to come back to the community and say, okay, what do you think? And if that's the time, you have some very good points. That's the time for us to say, yes, we need to have more left turn lanes. Yes, why do we have to wait at Nutty Brown if we just want to turn right? I mean, these are all good questions, but this is why we're here, to talk about these things and to find out what possibly might happen in the future. Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am. Those are the only 6 that are getting them right now. Whether that mostly be because of trend, because of needs, because of known crash history, different metrics of data that determined that we need those there. Keep in mind, again, we are competing federally for money across our entire region and statewide. And so those 6 projects were delivered for a price tag right at $2 million that we were able to get quick and deliver a huge improvement to the region. The 967 project is an example of one that's adding a center turn lane the entire way, and it's for about 3 miles-ish, and it's an $8 million project. 100%, not saying you're wrong, don't disagree that ultimate refuge from one end to the other is a need. That is a part of the ultimate schematic. Yeah, so I'm the area engineer. I will certainly take your feedback, and will tell you that we've had to do the same thing on US 290. 100% respect where you're coming from, but we'll also make a comment that we deter people from using the center turn lanes as an acceleration lane as well. And so I know what you're saying. I know that from a refuge perspective, it feels safe, and I do it too. I'll be the first one to raise my hand and say I do it too. But the purpose of those deterrents are to combat what a few people have said, in that Glenn maybe could speak to this as he's personally felt it. Coming down that center turn lane and having a vehicle approaching you at 55 or 60 miles an hour about to make a head-on, right? So I understand what you're saying, and we'll certainly take a look at making sure that we're not impacting safety to make a left out, and sit in that location for refuge. We're not trying to put them right at each intersection, and if you'd like a layout of what those look like, I can certainly share that with you. No, yeah, you did great. You had a great helper, by the way. Yes, ma'am. Have a great night.
Katie Williams and Lori Sanders. Oh, okay.
Yeah. And as Lori spoke to before about the amount of traffic going in and out of her business, is that not officially studied when approving lanes or looking at that for a new development?
Yes, it is. But keep in mind, so as traffic changes, as one development for 100 homes is installed, it may not warrant, it may not have enough traffic to generate and distribute people that it warrants a need. But as a development comes across the road and maybe adjacent to or down the road as a system, now everything is changing as it relates to how many people are on the road and not just how many people are going in and out of your subdivision, but how many people are using the facility. It starts to then really mold how we have to improve. New developers do look at all that data. And as a matter of fact, when I do a traffic impact analysis, a TIA, with any developer, they are responsible to look at impact intersections. Let's say one went in right here. He or she would have to look at the impact to Nutty Brown. They would have to look at, maybe Friendswood. They would have to look at 1826 and 967. They would have to look at how their development and the size of that development impacts the entire system. Thus why somebody like the Discovery development is on the hook to build a roundabout, because 967 and 1826 won't work once the Discovery is in place and functioning at full capacity.
But so like Skyridge had to look at the number of cars turning in and out of All-Stars before they put an entrance straight across from it on 1826?
TIAs look at what's called pro rata shares. So what that means is, and again, I don't want to get too technical and tell me to stop if I am, but basically what it does is it says you look as a developer, you look at your impacts, you're responsible for 100% of those impacts. Now you look at impacts at other locations, and you tell me if any of your traffic is distributing into an entrance. So for an example, into the gymnasium facility. If Skyridge said I had 5 people going straight across every day to go into your facility, that may be 1% of the overall traffic. So yeah, I need a signal here, but I'm only responsible for 1% of that signal. Does that make sense? So a TIA doesn't say the developer is completely responsible to fix the gymnasium's problem, as it is he's responsible to fix how he generates to that problem. Right. So Skyridge
but as far as
did
like
look
the
at
location of the entrance exit, because that's what I live in Rimrock 3, so all coastal, by 967. My kids go to All Stars. I drive a 10-passenger van. It's slow. I am turning left out of All Stars, trying to go uphill. I'm talking 10 to 15 miles an hour at the fastest when I start out. Like if I'm cruising, I'm okay, but turning left from a standstill. And I have already had, like Ms. Lori said, there have been about 3 accidents already at that intersection. And it's tricky for me turning left to know, like there's already people turning out and that people don't even live there yet. And so it seems crazy to me that anyone could have looked at that entrance straight across from somewhere that has 1,000 cars coming and going unless they didn't know that that business generated that amount of traffic in and out. And that's a possibility. I would like to know that stuff is getting looked at before more developments are being put on those roads, because the amount of cars coming in and out of businesses directly affect the traffic safety at those places, not just the number of houses that are being built.
So we have, as a department, as an agency, I think, and even maybe as a county, we have a stronger development program than we've ever had in terms of asking developers to fix what they cause. But I want to be very clear that Skyridge would not have been responsible to build a center turn lane because of the 1,000 trips a day that the gymnasium makes. Does that make sense? And so, that's right. So, you know, collaterally, if that would have been a 1,000 home subdivision, you might have got a turn lane because their entrances required it. We just didn't get there. Wait, one more?
Certainly. Sure. Absolutely. Yes, sir. For those of you who aren't familiar with the constable and the sheriff's office, the difference is the constable's office is the officers of the court, if you will. We're responsible for the civic duties within the county. If the courts issue any summons, any subpoenas, if they're issuing evictions, divorce papers, child custody papers, the constables, that's their constitutional duties. But again, we're Texas peace officers, so we have the same rights, duties, and responsibility as any peace officer. So in that, we've taken on the responsibility of assisting the sheriff's office in providing safety to the community. So we do handle calls. We do respond to accident scenes. We do traffic enforcement. So honestly, if you're looking in your rearview mirror and you see the blue lights and you see constable, you need to pull over because we have the authority to pull you over, okay? Don't just say it's just a constable. We have the authority, so please pull over. But Hays County, we're very fortunate here because the constables here, they saw the growth, they recognized it, the commissioner's court recognized it, and they delegated to the constables additional equipment and personnel to handle the problems that we face in our communities. So a lot of the credit for what you're seeing here in Hays County and Precinct 4 as far as proactiveness from your constable's office has to do with our commissioners. It truly, truly does. The short answer to that is your constables are better looking, they're more humble, better educated, you know, but that's the long answer.
Thank you, Rod.
So, is there another question?
So there's a questioner over here, Michael.
I'm just going to make a comment piggybacking on the young lady said, and that is to all of you, I guess. Do we have to like put out counting strips? In other words, she was talking about 1,000. It's probably more than 1,000 routes a week, right? You're talking about that? Do we have to do that on our own? I mean, we're willing to do it. So how can you estimate, how can you prognosticate something that you're not counting on? So one more question, part of this. So at the temple, now that COVID's over, we'll get up to 60,000. Mumpta said 40. That's what we're getting now. 60, 65,000 people visiting there out of one gate. So you've never heard that before, have you? Okay. So how do you know when you're doing something like that, besides the development, that there's not a huge impact with ingress and egress from places like ours? Or, for instance, the church here?
Yeah, so the first question about counts. TxDOT lays counters on all of our facilities once a year. So every year, once a year, we post new counts, not just once on every roadway, but at major generating points. And Ashley could probably help answer some of that, but we lay that out on what's called the statewide planning map, and every year we know what was last year's traffic, what is this year's traffic, and then our experts project that into values for 20 years. We are always looking at a 20-year horizon. So today it's 2022, we're looking at what is 2042, right? So we do counts every year. Now what we don't do is, and I think Hays County does count their own facilities, and some of their facilities we count through some federal programs, I believe, right? But we don't count driveways. We don't count minor street connections. That, while I do understand 60,000 visits in one session or one day, it is a lot.
1 year.
Okay, 1 year. All right. So that is certainly a lot. but we don't count private entities. We do, though, with these schematics and feasibility studies, go out and look at every little bit of land use to determine. We'll call landowners, our engineers and team will contact, whoever to say, how many people do you experience? How many people do you experience?
So
to help build traffic.
If we did it ourselves, and this is talking to the commissioner also, if we did it ourselves with a counter, or we have cameras that count cars right now, would that have any impact on anything? If there were 60,000 people?
No, like you said, they count them once a year, and that's the numbers they go by.
He said something about the Hays County. Okay.
Yes, Hays County, we do, on our county roads, we'll do counts where we feel like we need them. If we're looking to, if we're trying to see whether we're going to put a four-way stop, or do we need to request a light, we use those. But I think Ashby wants to answer this one.
So, as part of the forecasting work that we do, we have something called a travel demand model that is the basis for what TxDOT and the counties and some of the cities use to estimate traffic over time. Now, we don't look at subdivision streets because they aren't eligible for federal funding. However, should you go out and put a counter in, say at the facility that you're talking about, and you give that information either to Hays County or you gave it to Campo, we look at things in the model called special generators. And special generators are things like UT or a grocery store or a high school, because we know we get more traffic on those things called special generators. So if you went out and took the counts on that yourself and you gave that to us, we will put that in our model so that you start to see what that looks like. That gets fed back into the system when TxDOT does analysis.
So if I may know your name, many of the problems we're facing right now is because many of the laws, traffic, transportation, were done for times many decades ago. And the situation here now is so very different from when the laws were created and enacted. And I know the legal system is super slow. But what are you guys doing, Erin Sweener representatives, to modify the laws so that TxDOT, Campo, the representatives that we have here, have more power to solve the problems faster, so that we don't have to deal with these deficient, obsolete laws that are hampering safety and many other things that we're facing right now?
Hi, well, yes, I'm David Holmes, and I work for Representative Sweener, and you're right, the lawmaking process is very slow, and one thing we do is constantly try to stay part of the conversation and listen to where the problems are and what the problems are. We try to help facilitate meetings like this when that need comes to us, and we just try to be a part of the conversation so that when we hear of problems that can't be solved by all the processes that are being discussed tonight, that we can go and try to write legislation and pass legislation or alter legislation that is already going through to change laws and make the processes easier or quicker or different wherever that makes sense. And so it's a constant effort on our part to just be here and be part of the processes that do take place and try to make improvements wherever we can. But please call us anytime. Like I said, my name is David Holmes, and anyone in our office is ready to hear from any of you on these issues discussed tonight and any other issues. And if we're not the ones who can most immediately try and help solve those problems, we can try to talk to the people who are providing that service or doing that thing.
One thing we overlook is that we're having big city problems. Little towns don't really have these issues, and they don't really want to vote for funding for the big cities. So part of this is a rural-urban, divide that's going on.
And I don't know if this is what you're getting to, but something that counties have been trying to get through the legislature, we were talking about this earlier, is we don't have zoning authority outside of municipalities. And that's something that we've been asking for, and we get pushback from the larger cities are who actually push back from this. So this is what we've been asking. We don't have site development, we don't have zoning, so we do not have, that's why you see so many of these developments coming in outside of municipalities, because they have a lot less regulations. I think that's what you're getting to. Okay.
I had a question here.
Are there any other questions?
Yes, here. Thanks for being here. I'm from Hills, Texas subdivision. And the question I have comes from the PowerPoint slide on the 1826 improvements from 290 to 150. And my takeaway on that is that in terms of shovel-ready, immediate actionable items that will be happening, it's mainly from 290 up to the Hays County line. Whereas from Hays County line up to 150, where it's going to be delayed somewhat. But the question I had, that it seems to me from comments I heard earlier, that problem may have come about because there wasn't a unified front of treating 1826 as one entity. I guess perhaps maybe the Travis County folks acted separately from the Hays County folks. But given that the corridor as a whole is somewhat unified and not too much variance in what is presented, in order to expedite actionable items from Hays County to 150, is it possible to use the same administrative documentation that has already been vetted and brought about funding from TxDOT to Travis County? Could it be used by the Hays County people, since that's already been vetted, and help expedite that process from Hays County up to 150?
Yeah, absolutely. The feasibility study may 100% say that the same typical section and the same right-of-way foot, a lot of the same data just needs to be pulled into the new schematic, which would be for the Hays County portion. I think that 1826, in my year as area engineer, has been a united corridor. Very great community outreach. And what Commissioner Smith was referencing was our desire to get with Commissioner Ann Howard, who is a Travis County counterpart of Waltz, and try to push a message to get all of 1826 moving in a positive direction. Realistically, though, the reason that TxDOT has to identify sections is we have to prioritize areas at what we consider logical termination points, or 290 to 45, 45 to 150, because y'all all know the current economic standing as it relates to construction costs and those types of things. Realistically, we won't be able to fund one job that builds 1826 from 290 to 150. Nonetheless, maybe even one project that funds 1826 from 290 to 45. We just have to look at our needs, our regional needs, which section needs it first, how much money do we have available, how does it rank in our plan, right, Ashby? And then how do we deliver projects in a unified and planned, I guess I'm trying to say, approach.
And I'll just add, Commissioner Howard serves with us on CAMPA also, and she and I had lunch in Buda just last week. And I asked her to be here tonight, but she'd already had a previous engagement. But she's very supportive. She knows she knows that it does not need to stop at the county line, and she's very supportive of bringing it all the way to 150.
Good evening. Thank you for being here. It seems tonight that the immediacy of the solutions proposed, I mean, it seems like everything's going to be delayed for quite a while. And something that I heard that struck me as an interesting and good idea out of the box was paying for an officer, for that stretch. Commissioner Hood, you had mentioned $100,000 is roughly what we should expect for, the officer's salary, his benefits, and his car and equipment and stuff. You had also mentioned that over there in Belterra, they paid for, I guess, the officer's salary, and then the department paid for the benefit and the cars and, you know, whatever. I'm wondering, is there any friends and family discount that we can also get if we wanted to kind of share this information with our HOA boards, you know, for a lower price tag?
Yeah. First of all, y'all keep demoting him. He's not commissioner, he's a constable. Y'all demote him to commissioner. That's right. So he's above that. So no. And what he's saying, it's something that can, I'm not sure what is Belterra's portion of the deputy, do you remember?
They have 2,000 homes in the Belterra subdivision. Each home pays about $1.79 a month to receive that officer for a part-time position. It's a win-win for everyone. Belterra benefits from it. We stagger the officer throughout, so it's never all at one time. It's 4 hours on a Tuesday, and then it may be Tuesday morning, and then it may be Thursday afternoon. There's another 4 hours. Ultimately, it's 20 hours a week is what the officer. But for the money, and again, Belterra is a large subdivision, so $1.79 spread out that it covers their costs. I don't know how it would affect your community, but that's something that the county is open to, and all you have to do is communicate.
Like
just meet with Walt.
The county would essentially be open to paying for the car and the benefits.
As we go through our budget, as we work it in.
So that we could lower our overall.
You want Commissioner Smith to champion that for you. I will say one thing. I represent 1626, and we have a subdivision right off of 1626 that complained about cars bypassing 1626 during construction and speeding through their neighborhood. So I was able to get extra patrols. And in that patrol, they stopped 30 cars in one day. 20 of them lived in that subdivision. So he may be writing some of y'all in this room a ticket too, so be ready.
More than likely will.
Thank you for your idea. Actually, sir, what's your name?
Ty Getterman. I'm from Friendship Ranch.
Okay. Actually, I think that's a reasonable idea, and we've come together now with 10 neighborhoods and a bunch of churches. Perhaps we can raise that at one of our meetings, that idea. I mean, we've got probably several thousand residents up and down 1826. Perhaps they'd go for some program like this. I don't know. We can talk about it.
I mean, it seems like even if we did a part-time situation like the other officer has, like peak hours would.
But wait a minute. You wouldn't give tickets to the leadership, would you? Okay. All right. Anybody else have any questions?
Sorry, thanks so much for your time. Just a quick question. I live in Bear Creek Estates, and when I'm turning left, sometimes it'll take like 2 to 3 minutes, and I know that's probably normal on 1826. But I was super happy when we got that, what I thought was like a middle turn lane, and then they put up those sticks, and I totally understand why now, because people were trying to go around. Is there any way to use that turn lane and also have the sticks, or like a curb maybe, or something so that like there's that refuge lane, to get halfway through?
Yeah, so I'll take a look at it. I haven't looked at that one in particular, but again, same situation. Maybe we can scoot them down a little bit. So let me look at that one. I'll take a look.
Hi, Rob Johnson. I'm currently serving as president in Rimrock, and I had a question on the zoning authority, both for Commissioner and for Mr. Holmes. Which would be most helpful and/or which would be more likely to pass? If you're talking about giving zoning authority to the counties, maybe if it's limited to counties with explosive growth, or if you're talking about expanding a municipality's ability to enforce their zoning in their ETJ and actually making them responsible for that ETJ area, where obviously we're not voting for the council so they don't listen to us, but if they have some legal responsibility for dealing with the growth in that area, maybe our phone calls will matter.
You bet. You must have been, or you weren't sitting up here when we were talking earlier. This is exactly the same thing. Personally, I would think giving it to the counties because you can vote for, you're the person making those zoning authority, you have to vote for. If you gave it to the cities in their ETJ, you'd have representation. I mean, so that's would be my preference, but I'll let.
Yeah. It's been a long time, there's been a long time resistance at the legislature to give counties more power in this area. And what we were talking about just before the meeting started is that Representative Weiner is really interested in looking for either new ideas or where it might have been done in other states to give, even just where there is super fast growth, some extra powers to try to combat these problems as they come up.
Good evening, and thank you for organizing this. For Mr. Johnson and Mr. Zamora, 3 people stood up and talked about the trips, the amount of trips that come out of their organizations, the gym, the Radha Madhav Dam, the where's Marie's hair salon, and it seems that that's not in the calculations of TIAs, because you're saying that you take the amount of houses in a subdivision and that's how you calculate the trips. But if you have one construction like Radha Madhav Dam or the gym that's producing thousands of trips, well, you have to bring that into your formula. And isn't there a way, even if traditionally you don't use that, don't you have to modify that now, quick? Because this is growing so fast. And I think that so many of the accidents happen precisely at intersections, at those entrances and exits from these facilities. So isn't there a way that you can, now that you've gotten feedback, that you can consider that for at least these sections where you're getting 3 areas that are going to be real problem areas?
Yeah, so let's separate the question really, and all these questions related to TIAs are 2 different topics. It's development driven, it's what a developer has to do, and what TxDOT and our regional team members, our planning board have to do to accommodate our system. So for our system, every one of those traffic generators, as Ashby mentioned, and I'll let him talk a little bit more about it again if you'd like, is in that traffic demand model or can be implemented into it. And our traffic engineers that will model this corridor, so the ultimate schematic that we'll give you will not be maybe a Willie by the back of the book, I think we need 2 lanes, right? It'll be supported by sound traffic engineering that tells us for mobility for the next 25 years based off of, or 20 years based off of the trends in growth. It'll look at a model and it'll say, this is how many lanes, or this is what configuration you need, this is what turn lanes you need, where you need them. That's the system, TxDOT system. The development system, they do take that data into account, but again, those developers can't be held responsible, even by the state, to fix what would be traffic generated by the gym, even though they're coming adjacent or across from that gym, okay? So, again, Skyridge might have said, we know that there's 1,000 people coming in and out of there a day, but that's not a Skyridge problem to solve. So I hope that makes sense. But that is, go ahead.
To enter and exit, is that not on them? I mean, they're straight. Have you looked at it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's straight
So,
across.
no,
So I mean, I feel like of all the hill section that there is of that development, it seems like that was a very poor and dangerous place to put their entrance and exit straight across from a very busy business, and it's been evidenced by 3 accidents in a month, and people don't even live there yet.
So
4. Sorry.
So again, while we have the ability to help decide and or dictate, I won't even say dictate, help decide, make the decision on whether you get a driveway or not, State law does not allow us to landlock or otherwise stop driveways from going in on private property. So their driveways, the reason they closed the fourth driveway was because it didn't meet access policies, and it was the worst of the three that remained, 100%. It was the one that's right as you crest the hill, right on top. I think you remember where they had their construction trailer at that time.
It was where their sales office was.
That's right. So that's the one that we said, can't do it, doesn't make sense, going to be a problem. But as far as, so to be very honest, if you're asking me why didn't Skyridge build a center turn lane because they put a driveway directly across from the gymnasium, well, I don't get to I mean, I can tell them to move, but again, that would have made it worse because now you'd have had non-concentric driveways where a left turner coming out of Skyridge may have contacted a left turner coming out of the gymnasium, or vice versa, right? So you have to look at offset intersections are worse from a traffic operations perspective than concentric or directly across from each other intersections. So now you've got, okay, now how do I get that improvement put in? And because their traffic didn't generate the volume to make that improvement, that I can't ask them to do that. In today's world, if the gymnasium would have come in, and I could keep saying gymnasium, I know you do more than that, but the gymnastics gymnasium facility would have came in, it would have probably required, based off of their traffic study, to build that turn lane in today's world. But when it was built, that wasn't evaluated, it wasn't requested, and so now we, as a whole, have to find a way to get that installed. And that's what we'll continue to look for a means to do.
So forgive my ignorance on this part of it, but who approved the plan the way it is with Skyridge? And who was it Dripping Springs? Was it Hays County? Because, you know, TxDOT didn't have much to do with that, I don't think. But who approved it?
I think it's a conglomerate of multiple entities.
Well, somebody voted on it. Somebody
TxDOT does issue the driveway permits.
Right.
So their rights to access come from TxDOT.
Okay.
I don't want to speak for the local entity, but I do believe that that's within Dripping Springs ETJ who reviewed their plat and would have ultimately approved the subdivision. So
Okay.
by their subdivision ordinances, ETJ or Dripping Springs would have done that approval.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, that brings up one other thing, and I'm not going to stay on that topic very long, but I've lived in the area since 95, 96, many other people around here. You're supposed to get notices when these things come up, even in the planning stages. And we never got any. We didn't get anything for the Shell station either until we found out that there was a meeting and we got to put some input into that. So we were blinded by what was going on over here without having input. Normally, and maybe that's gone, over a perimeter area or 5 miles out or whatever it is, you get the notification to all the neighborhoods and all the neighbors and all the addresses that this is going to happen. We're going to talk about it, come to the meeting, and we never got it.
Yeah, that was absolutely, either they broke the law or somebody simply did not send out the notices or something, because a lot of people have complained about that. And the only people I can think of to really hammer about that would be Dripping Springs.
That's happened before, so.
Folks, it's getting kind of late. The church needs to lock it up. I thank you very much for coming, and follow our Facebook page. Follow our Facebook page, and we'll keep you all informed.
Bill, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
It was very good. Yeah, great job.
I just want to speak the name of Jesus heart and every mind. I know there is peace within your presence. I speak Jesus. I just want to speak the name of Jesus, till every dark addiction starts to break, declaring there is hope and there is freedom. I speak Jesus. Your name is power, your name is healing, your name is life. Break every stronghold, shine through the shadows, burn like a fire. I just want to speak the name of Jesus over fear and all anxiety.